Just got out of the ballroom where I got to be front row to hear Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson speak, and I'm like, here are my unfiltered thoughts. The biggest thing, one, she's delightful. She's like sweet. She seems really sweet. She was wearing an incredible yellow blazer. Anyway, focus. One of the things that I really appreciated was how aware she was of history and the impact that history has had on her life. And I don't think that was just because she knew she was talking to a bunch of social studies teachers. She was talking about how the year of her birth, her being born in 1970, was really significant because it's really one of the first years that she as a Black woman could be born in an era where she had equal rights. She also was talking about one of her icons, Judge Constance Baker Motley, who was the first Black woman to argue a case in front of the Supreme Court. And I think she said she argued 10 cases and won 9 of them. She also was part of the team of civil rights lawyers that worked with Thurgood Marshall. And she talked about the irony that they literally share a birthday. So they're born on the same day, but 49 years apart. And just sharing how grateful she is that Constance Motley was a genius, but she would have never had the opportunity to rise to the Supreme Court, even though she worked alongside Thurgood Marshall, who did, right? The last thing that really moved me was talking about her parents and how both of her parents were public school teachers, which that got a really big applause. But she was talking about her dad, who was a high school history teacher, shout out, in Washington, D.C., and that he would take all his students to all the different sites around D.C. They'd go to Congress, they'd go to the Lincoln Memorial, whatever. And then in those trips, her dad was like, maybe I want to be a lawyer. Maybe I want to be in these places. Something that he'd never really had the chance to consider since he grew up in the Jim Crow South. So when she was 3, her dad went to law school, and she was telling this story of this memory of sitting at the table, and her dad would be sitting there with all of his law books, and she'd be sitting there with her coloring books. And she said, it just never occurred to me that you would be anything but be a lawyer, because that's what she saw. She was also talking about her high school speech and debate teacher and how she just changed her life more than really anyone else besides her family, and how this job of being an educator is so rewarding in the really long term, but in the short term it's really hard. But that you never know who's sitting in your room, right? So you never know who's in your speech and debate room, who's gonna go on to be the first Black woman on the Supreme Court. You never know who's gonna be clerking for you, right? She clerked for Justice Breyer, and then about 20 years later, she takes his spot and is literally sitting in his same office. Anyway, incredibly inspiring. I'm so grateful to NCSS for inviting me and for making sure that I was able to be in that room. Just legitimately, this is the most maybe invigorating, kind of joyful conference I've ever been to. So definitely you should be checking out the Chicago conference for next year. I know that I'll be there.